It was only a note, meet you outside the post office, George Street, corner, 7:30 Tuesday night. Love, Cassie, and that was all it said. The bitch, what she's doing writing to me. She's had the kid and she's out of the home and now she's looking for marriage. I won't go, no, I better go. If I don't, God knows what she'll do. I've got to put her off somehow, some ways. Hell, this is terrible. I could murder that slut. Dano. She stood there, looking as if she were going to cry at any moment, her lips shaking. This moment, the climax of all the months of waiting, of suffering, and of undergoing humiliation and pain and terrible loneliness. It had been going to be such a wonderful moment, and she was terrified lest she bungle it. He said, "Funny, I don't know what to say." They stood staring at each other, the crowds bustling them. She thought, in a moment, he's going to ask. He wants to ask, but he's shy. But Dano did not ask about the baby. Cassie felt a deep disappointment, but she thought, forgivingly, of course he wouldn't ask about it here. He wants us to be alone. He grabbed her arm. Let's get away somewhere, Cassie. They went across George Street and up into York Street and down another street and found a dirty-looking milk bar with last year's chocolate wrappers in the window and a dusty light and a radio going, and a fat Joss between the counter holding a discolored cigarette in his mouth with an inch of ash drooping from it. They went into the dentist corner and sat down, Cassie not noticing the place, or its grubbiness, or the greasy circles on the table. She burst out, "It's a boy, Dano. He's lovely. His eyes are just like yours." Dano worked up a smile. "That's Bonzer." He saw the puzzlement in her face, and his mind gave him a nudge. "Pull your socks up. This won't do. More of the soft stuff." "Sweet. Damn all you care if the kid's got a tail or two square heads, but give her the heifer dust." "Gee, Cassie, I was just about off me head around about the time it was due, worrying about you." She smiled softly. "I know, Dano. All the time I could feel you right there with me. Dano, you're not looking too well." He looked brave and reluctant. "Truth is, I've been a bit crook. Never mind me, though. How'd you know I was at Alexander's? Where'd you get my address?" Her eyes were bright and innocent. "Lucy told me. She came to see me last week. There's another dame I could murder, long-tongued lizard, but she'll keep. Where's the smile? Bring it out of storage. On with the sweetness and light. Where are your people now?" She thought, men are funny. He's so shy he doesn't know which way to look. I've had a month to get used to being a mother. Anyway, it's different with a girl. Oh, I wish we'd gone somewhere else where we could put our arms around each other. Oh, they've got a grocery shop at Gosford. Mum's been pretty sick. She couldn't come to see me the last month. The dreamy waitress dawdled up. Dano thought, "About time, you flat-chested pancake, and ordered 2 coffees. How is the old boy?" "I don't know. All right, I guess. What are you asking all the questions for, Dano? Tell me you're happy to see me with you again. Tell me you want to see our baby. Tell me you love me." He twirled the sugar basin lid on the dirty table. "I suppose you'll be going up there for a while," he said, and raised his head, giving the statement a casual air. Up there, her eyes were big and mystified. "What for, when we are going to be married?" Now it was out, he felt better, freer to invent and chase the course of his mind for clues. "Well, so we are." The waitress came up with the coffee, slopping over into the saucers, and a couple of tarnished spoons, tore off the check, and put it on the table. Dano pushed one of the cups over to Cassie and helped 3 spoons of sugar into his own. "You didn't expect to get married right away, did you?" She looked at him like a kid offered an ice cream which is snatched away at the moment of grabbing. "Why, Dano, of course I did. But gee, not all at once. It'd look funny. Why not later?" "Why not now?" she asked, sudden trepidation coming into her heart. I mean, a month's time, perhaps, we could go about together and you could take me out to your place and a sickish feeling slid into her stomach. You mean you're ashamed because I have a baby and people know? Hell, no, Cassie. How could I be ashamed of you? He said, with just the right tone of bravado and defiance of all the world. I'd just as soon get up on top of our house and tell the whole world, the whole lot of 'em, your baby's mine too. She relaxed, smiling. Of course you would, Dano. Don't I know it? Oh, Dano, I know it's hard. We've got lots of problems to overcome yet, but you see, we'll be so happy if you knew how I've worked it all out. I was just thinking, I'm just going on for 17, and you're about the same. Wouldn't it be best if we waited for another year, that's all? Another year. The plank was whisked out from under her feet. He couldn't look at her with that tone in her voice. He chewed his forefinger and looked at the fat man behind the counter, and he saw her out of the corner of his eye, staring at him, and the tension made the palms of his hands sweat. She said in a low voice, feeling sick, "You never said anything about that before. Gee, Cassie, don't you get it? I'm trying to do what's best for us both, and all I get is a dirty look." The injured air had always worked before, the sad face and the quiet voice, but now she didn't say anything, staring down at her hands, all the excitement, happiness gone out of her. "It's not long to wait, is it? A year? It'd be a long time to me." Her voice quivered, but she straightened it out. "I wouldn't have come through it if it hadn't been for this to look forward to, Dano. You don't know, I've tried to keep my end up, but shutting up about things doesn't make them any easier." He bent his head and looked uncomfortable, and dipped his spoon in the dark slop on his saucer, and doodled with it on the table. "Another thing," he said quietly, as if in guilty conscience, "I haven't got any money, I haven't been able to save anything, I've been sick and had bad luck with jobs, and I haven't been able to get enough for us, like to get married." Cassie's face lit up. She snatched at his words with a childish, hysterical delight of relief. "But I can get a job, Dano. Was that what you were worried about? Didn't you think of me working? Of course I can." "No, that's no good. I don't want you working. That's my job." He felt desperate. He'd have to move fast, or she'd have him rolled up and glued down. Bloody dumb Sheilas tried to break it to them gently, so as not to hurt their feelings, and they were too dumb to wake up. "Look," he said, and the impatience and resentment crept into his voice, and he didn't bother to pull them out. "In a year I'll be earning good dough, and it'll be easier for us all around. I don't see why you can't go to your people at Gosford. It don't make sense. What's she looking like that for, with a face as long as a fiddle and suspicion all over it? So what?" Cassie Dooley felt as though she were suspended in air. For a moment the gloomy walls, the pock-marked table, the coffee steaming in the cup, all took on remoteness, as though they had been removed one step from her cognizance. Dano went on talking in a voice grown queerly brittle and metallic in her ears, like the sound of a radio off the station. She sat there, a sickly little smile on her face, like a boxer after he has received a knockout blow. It wasn't true, it couldn't be true, and yet there it was, written all over his face. He didn't want to marry her. No matter what he said, that was the truth. He didn't want to marry her. It was just as though she had found out, suddenly and irrevocably, that there was no God, or that she was someone else, and insane, and only imagining she were Kathleen Dooley. The shock was so great that she was incapable of speech or movement. She knew she would go on sitting there, looking at the coffee cup, until the lights went out, and the cleaner swept the floor, and there was no sound save that of the mice scampering. All that she had gone through for him, the betrayal of her moral values, the agonizing fear of discovery, her mother's grief, the terrible brutal revelation that her father was rotten with hypocrisy, that her mother was a coward, the alien wilderness of the world into which she had been cast with the personal kindness of strangers, her only refuge, the loneliness and the longing, the bitter agonies of the labor table, None of these things meant anything. It was all wasted. It hadn't been strength or sacrifice or anything at all except a proof that she had been a fool from the start. She tried to stir her pride, but it was dead. She wanted to say, "All right, Dano, don't worry. You needn't ever be afraid. I'll say that baby's yours." I'd be too ashamed. But her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth, and she half forgotten how to frame the words. She got up like an old woman and squeezed out of the cubicle. "Hey, where are you off to, Cassie?" She was halfway down the corridor when he went after her, and she was out in the street, and he was hurrying, and the great Joss said, "Hey," and he dashed back in, a fluster, and pulled his pockets out, and a few men laughed and joked, and he paid and ran out into the street. But he couldn't see her. He looked up and down, but he couldn't see her. He ran to the corner of York Street, but he couldn't see her. She was gone into the darkness, and he was alone and frightened, but not for long. He began to think, "What a mug, soft as they come, and that's something you've learned, kid. You can practically get a deluxe ticket through life playing on the saps and softies in this world. She won't blab, and anyway, what's up with me? Who'd believe her now?"